Human bought a ghost town for 100 credits, only to find a single alien mother still living there. The shuttle's landing gear creaked ominously as it settled onto the parched surface of Horus. Dust billowed around the craft, momentarily obscuring the view through the scratched viewport. Major Ryan Caldwell, formerly of the Colonial Defense Forces, squinted through the haze at what was supposedly his new home. "Well, shit," he muttered, running a hand through his short blonde hair. They weren't kidding about the ghost town part. The settlement of Marana spread before him like the bleached skeleton of a long-dead creature. Massive domed structures rose from the desert floor, their once gleaming surfaces now pitted and dulled by years of sandstorms. Smaller buildings clustered around them, many partially collapsed. The whole place had the eerie stillness of a graveyard. Ryan checked the property deed on his datapad one more time. 100 credits for an entire settlement? The deal had seemed too good to be true when he'd stumbled across it in that dingy bar in Proxima Station. Now he understood why. He pulled on his jacket, a modified military issue with reinforced plating across the shoulders and back, and hit the hatch release. Hot, dry air rushed in, carrying the scent of dust and abandonment. Ryan grabbed his duffel bag and stepped onto the alien soil that was now, technically, his property. The silence was absolute. No wind, no animals, no machinery, just the fading hiss of the shuttle's cooling engines. Ryan's boots crunched on the gritty surface as he made his way toward what appeared to be the central dome. His hand instinctively rested on the blaster at his hip, a habit from 15 years of military service. "Home, sweet home," he said to the emptiness, his voice sounding unnaturally loud. "Just needed to get away from it all, didn't you, Caldwell?" Well, mission fucking accomplished. After the Centauri conflict and the mess at New Damascus, Ryan had wanted isolation. Somewhere to forget the faces of the dead. Somewhere far from the politics and the endless wars between human colonies and the various alien factions. Somewhere to start over. But as he approached the largest structure, something caught his attention. A faint wisp of smoke rising from one of the smaller buildings off to his right. Ryan froze, every sense suddenly on high alert. He wasn't alone. Moving with the practiced stealth of a veteran, he changed direction, approaching the building cautiously. It was a low, curved structure, its walls made of the same sand-colored material as the others. But unlike the rest, this one showed signs of maintenance. The entrance was clear of debris, and as he got closer, he detected the unmistakable aroma of cooking food. Ryan drew his blaster and positioned himself beside the doorway. "Hello?" he called out. "Anyone home?" Silence answered him, then a soft shuffling sound from inside. "I'm not looking for trouble," he continued. "Just bought this place, according to the deed anyway." More silence, then a voice, female, slightly accented with a musical quality that identified it as definitely not human. "You bought Marana?" "That's right," Ryan replied, still not entering. "Paid for it fair and square. 100 credits. A bitter laugh came from inside. 100 credits for all of this. How generous of the Galactic Registry. Ryan tensed at the edge in her voice. "Look, I didn't know anyone was still living here. The place was listed as abandoned." "Of course it was." Slowly, a figure appeared in the doorway. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. She was tall, taller than him by several inches, with slender limbs and a graceful bearing that spoke of strength despite her apparent fragility. Her skin was a pale blue, almost luminescent in the harsh sunlight. Long silvery hair fell past her shoulders, partially obscuring features that were almost human, yet distinctly alien. High cheekbones, a narrow nose, and large almond-shaped eyes that regarded him with unmistakable wariness. Those eyes were the deepest violet he'd ever seen. She wore a simple dress of light-colored fabric, worn but clean. Her hands, he noticed, bore calluses and small scars, the marks of someone who worked hard to survive. "Are you here to drive us out?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. Ryan holstered his blaster and raised his hand slightly. "No. Like I said, I didn't know anyone was still here. I'm just looking for a place to stay." "Us?" he added, belatedly registering her choice of words. As if on cue, a small face peered around the woman's legs. A child, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with the same blue skin and silver hair, but with eyes that held more curiosity than fear. "This is my daughter Iris," the woman said, placing a protective hand on the child's head. "And I am Kavira. We are the last of Marana." Ryan felt something twist in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Compassion, maybe, or guilt. "I'm Ryan Caldwell," he said, "former Major Colonial Defense Forces." He hesitated, then added, "Look, I don't want to displace you. Maybe we can work something out." Kavira studied him for a long moment, her violet eyes seeming to look straight through him. Then, to his surprise, she stepped back from the doorway. "You must be hungry after your journey," she said. "Come inside, we have food." It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a beginning. As Ryan ducked through the low doorway, following the alien woman and her child into the small dwelling, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he hadn't anticipated. He'd come to Oris seeking solitude, a place to escape his past. Instead, he'd found Kavira and Iris, and a complication he hadn't bargained for. The meal was simple, a stew of local tubers and dried meat that Ryan couldn't identify. But after months of military rations and processed food on transport ships, it tasted like heaven. They ate in relative silence, the only sounds being Iris's occasional giggle when Ryan's unfamiliarity with the utensils caused him to fumble. "So," Ryan said finally, setting down his bowl, "how long have you two been here alone?" Kavira's violet eyes flickered to her daughter before returning to him. 3 cycles. Since the evacuation." "Evacuation?" "The mining corporation declared Marana unprofitable. They pulled out, took everyone with them." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Ryan detected an undercurrent of bitterness. "My husband Taryn was a geologist. He believed there were still valuable minerals here, just deeper than they were willing to dig. We stayed to prove him right." Ryan noticed her use of past tense. "And your husband now?" "Died in a cave-in 2 cycles ago." She said it simply, but her hand tightened around her spoon. "The stabilization equipment failed." "I'm sorry," Ryan said, meaning it. Loss was something he understood all too well. Iris looked up at him with those huge, curious eyes. "Your skin is different," she said suddenly. Ryan smiled. "That's because I'm human. From Earth, originally." "What's Earth?" the child asked. "It's a planet very far from here. Lots of water and green plants." "Like in the stories?" Iris's eyes widened. "Exactly like in the stories," Ryan confirmed, wondering what tales Kavira had been telling her daughter. A sudden howl of wind interrupted their conversation. Kavira's head snapped up, her expression alarmed. "What is it?" Ryan asked, instantly alert. "Sandstorm," she said, rising quickly. "A big one, judging by the sound. We need to secure everything." Ryan followed her to the doorway. The sky had transformed in the short time they'd been eating. What had been clear blue was now an ominous yellow-brown, the horizon obscured by a massive wall of swirling dust approaching rapidly. "Damn," he breathed. "That doesn't look good." "It isn't," Kavira confirmed. "These storms can strip the skin from your bones if you're caught outside." She turned to her daughter. "Iris, get the sealing tape from the storage box." The little girl nodded and scurried away. "My shuttle," Ryan said suddenly. "It's not secured." Kavira grabbed his arm as he moved toward the door. "You can't go out there now. The leading edge is already too close. That shuttle is my only way off this rock," he argued. "And you'll die before you reach it," she countered, her grip surprisingly strong. "The storm will last through the night. We'll check on your shuttle tomorrow." Ryan hesitated, torn between the instinct to protect his property and the obvious danger. The decision was made for him as the first blast of wind-driven sand hit the building with a sound like thousands of tiny bullets. "Fine," he conceded. "What do we need to do?" For the next hour, they worked together, sealing the dwelling against the storm. Ryan was impressed by the efficiency of Kavira's preparations. She clearly knew what she was doing, directing him to reinforce weak spots in the structure, while she and Iris applied a special sealant to the windows and door frames. As the storm's fury increased, the building creaked and groaned around them. Iris whimpered at a particularly loud bang from the roof. "Yeah, it's all right, little one," Ryan said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. "This place has weathered worse, I bet." "Many worse," Kavira agreed, giving him a grateful look. "But this section of roof has been weakening. I haven't had the materials to repair it properly." Ryan glanced up at the ceiling where a fine stream of sand was beginning to sift through a small crack. I've got some sealant compound in my bag. Military grade. Should hold until we can make proper repairs. He retrieved the compound and climbed onto a chair to reach the crack. As he worked, he was acutely aware of Kavira watching him, her eyes following his movements with a mixture of gratitude and something else he couldn't quite identify. "You're good at this," she observed. "Fixing things?" Ryan shrugged. "Had to be. Out on the frontier, you learn to repair everything yourself or you don't survive long." "The frontier?" she asked. "Border colonies. I was stationed on half a dozen of them. Not much different from here, actually. Remote, harsh conditions, minimal support." The compound hardened quickly, sealing the leak. Ryan stepped down from the chair, finding himself unexpectedly close to Kavira. Up close, the luminescence of her skin was even more striking, a subtle glow that seemed to come from within. "Thank you," she said softly. "Just returning the favor for the meal," he replied, suddenly aware of how long it had been since he'd stood this close to a woman, human or otherwise. The moment was broken by another violent gust that shook the entire structure. A section of wall near the door bulged inward alarmingly. "That's not good," Ryan muttered, moving quickly to brace it with his shoulder. "Got anything we can use to reinforce this?" Kavira shook her head. "Nothing strong enough." Ryan thought quickly. "The plating on my jacket. It's reinforced durasteel, designed to stop blaster fire. Should hold against the wind." Without waiting for a response, he shrugged out of his jacket, keeping one shoulder pressed against the bulging wall. The cool air hit his bare arms, raising goosebumps. Kavira took the jacket from him, her fingers brushing his. "I'll get tools," she said, her voice slightly higher than before. Ryan pretended not to notice the way her eyes lingered on his arms and shoulders, exposed now in his simple black t-shirt. Together they worked to remove the metal plating and secure it over the weakened section of wall. The howling of the storm grew louder, but the reinforcement held. "We should be safe now," Kavira said, stepping back to examine their work. "The worst of the storm will pass by morning." Ryan nodded, suddenly aware of how tired he was. The journey to Oris, the surprise of finding Kavira and Aris, and now the storm, it had been a long day. "You can rest here," Kavira said, gesturing to a small alcove with cushions. "It's not much, but it's comfortable." "Thank you," Ryan said, "for everything." As he settled onto the makeshift bed, Ryan watched as Kavira tucked Aris into a similar alcove across the room. The tenderness in her movements stirred something in him, a longing he'd thought long buried under years of military discipline and solitude. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside this small dwelling, Ryan felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of peace, and as his eyes drifted close, his last thought was that perhaps he'd found exactly what he needed on this desolate planet after all. Ryan woke to the sound of silence. After the relentless howling of the sandstorm, the quiet was almost disorienting. Sunlight streamed through a small window, casting patterns on the floor. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he heard soft humming and the clatter of cookware. Kavira was already awake, preparing something at the small cooking station. Iris sat cross-legged on the floor, playing with what looked like carved wooden figures. "Morning," Ryan said, his voice rough with sleep. Kavira turned, a slight smile on her face. "You slept deeply." "I've been up for hours." "Military habit. When you get a chance to sleep, you don't waste it." Ryan sat up, running a hand through his hair. Sand sifted from it, dusting the cushions. "Storms passed?" "Yes, the worst is over." She handed him a cup of steaming liquid that smelled faintly of cinnamon. "Tarka tea. It will help clear your head." Ryan accepted it gratefully, their fingers brushing in the exchange. The tea was bitter but not unpleasant, with an aftertaste like honey. "I should check on my shuttle," he said after a few sips. Kavira nodded. "I need to assess the damage to our water collection system anyway. We can go together." After a quick breakfast of dried fruit and something like flatbread, they stepped outside. The landscape had been transformed. Dunes had shifted, revealing parts of structures that had been buried before, while covering others. The air was preternaturally clear, as if the storm had scrubbed away every particle of dust. Ryan's heart sank as soon as he spotted his shuttle, or what remained of it. "Shit," he breathed, breaking into a jog. The craft lay on its side, half buried in sand. One of the stabilizer wings had been torn completely off. The viewport was cracked, and sand had poured in through the broken seal. The engines were still partially visible, and even from a distance, Ryan could see they were clogged with fine dust. Kavira and Aris caught up to him as he circled the wreckage, assessing the damage with a professional eye. "Can you fix it?" Kavira asked quietly. Ryan shook his head. "Not a chance. The navigation system is fried, the engines are compromised, and the hull integrity is shot." He kicked at the sand in frustration. "I'm stranded." "I'm sorry," Kavira said, and he could tell she meant it. Ryan took a deep breath, forcing down the panic that threatened to rise. He'd been in worse situations, much worse. "Well," he said, with forced lightness, "looks like I'm committed to my real estate investment now." Ares tugged at his hand. "Does that mean you're staying with us?" The innocent question caught him off guard. He looked down at the child's hopeful face, then at Kavira, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "Looks that way, kiddo," he said finally. At least until I can figure something else out." Ares beamed, revealing teeth that were slightly more pointed than human ones. "Good. You can help Mama fix things, and you can tell me more stories about Earth." Despite his predicament, Ryan found himself smiling. "Sure thing." They spent the next few hours salvaging what they could from the shuttle. Ryan's military training kicked in, prioritized survival gear, communications equipment, weapons, and medical supplies. The long-range communicator was damaged but potentially repairable. The emergency beacon was intact, though Ryan wasn't sure anyone would be passing close enough to pick up the signal. As he worked, he couldn't help noticing how efficiently Kavira moved, how she anticipated what he needed before he asked. There was a natural rhythm to their cooperation that felt right somehow. "Your husband taught you about spacecraft?" he asked as she helped him extract the shuttle's power cells. "No," she replied. "I was a technician before I was a geologist's wife. Specialized in environmental systems for deep space mining operations." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "That's a useful skill set." "Not useful enough to convince the company to maintain Marana," she said with a hint of bitterness. By midday, they had salvaged everything worth taking and returned to Kavira's dwelling. Ryan set up the emergency beacon on the roof while Kavira prepared a meal. As he was securing the beacon, something caught his eye, a faint glow emanating from one of the larger domed structures at the center of the settlement. He hadn't noticed it before, but now with the shifted sands and the clear air, it was unmistakable. "Kavira," he called down. "What's that building in the center?" "The big dome." She emerged, shading her eyes to look where he was pointing. "The old power station. It's been dead for years." "You sure about that?" "Because something's glowing in there." Her expression changed to one of surprise. "That's not possible. The reactors were decommissioned when the company left." Ryan climbed down. "Well, something's active, and I'm guessing it wasn't before the storm." Kavira frowned. The sand shifts must have uncovered something, or reconnected something. "Worth checking out?" She hesitated. "It could be dangerous. The power systems were experimental, designed to tap into the planet's magnetic field." Ryan grinned. "Dangerous is my middle name. Actually, it's Thomas, but you get the idea." That earned him a small smile. "After we eat," she conceded, "and Ares stays here." As they sat down to eat, Ryan found himself studying Kavira more closely. There was a grace to her movements that fascinated him, something almost ethereal, yet undeniably strong. When she caught him looking, he didn't look away. "What?" she asked, a hint of self-consciousness in her voice. "Just thinking that being stranded here might not be the worst thing that's ever happened to me," he said honestly. A faint purple flush spread across her cheeks. A blush, he realized with delight. "You humans are very direct," she murmured. "Life's too short not to be," he replied. "Especially when you spend most of it dodging blaster fire." Her violet eyes met his. "And is that what you want? Directness between us?" The question hung in the air, loaded with possibility. Ryan felt his pulse quicken. "I think," he said carefully, that I'd like to see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibility. Kavira's lips curved in a smile that made his breath catch. Possibility, she echoed. I like that word. Outside, the mysterious glow from the central dome pulsed slightly brighter, as if responding to the energy building between them. After leaving Aris with strict instructions to stay inside, Ryan and Kavira made their way toward the glowing dome. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, but Ryan barely noticed the heat. His mind was occupied with two things: the mysterious power source and the woman walking beside him. "You're staring again," Kavira said without looking at him. Ryan grinned. "Can you blame me? We don't have women like you on Earth." "And what are women like on Earth?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Not blue, not as tall, definitely not as intriguing." The purple flush returned to her cheeks. "You're very, what's the human expression? Smooth?" "Only when I'm trying to impress someone," he admitted. They reached the central dome, a massive structure that dwarfed the surrounding buildings. Up close, the glow was more pronounced, a pulsing blue-green light emanating from deep within. "The main entrance should be on the far side," Kavira said, leading the way, "if it hasn't been buried by the storm." The entrance was partially obstructed by sand, but they managed to clear enough to squeeze through. Inside, the temperature dropped noticeably. The dome's interior was cavernous, filled with machinery Ryan didn't recognize. Curved panels, twisting conduits, and what appeared to be crystalline structures embedded in the walls. "This is way beyond standard mining equipment," he observed. "The company was experimenting with new technology here," Kavira explained, running her hand along one of the panels. Terran said they were trying to tap into the planet's magnetic core. The source of the glow became apparent as they moved deeper into the facility, a central column of swirling energy contained within a transparent cylinder that stretched from floor to ceiling. "That shouldn't be active," Kavira whispered, her eyes wide. "They shut it down when they left." Taryn and I checked. Ryan approached the column cautiously. The storm must have reconnected something, maybe shifted the sand that was blocking a power conduit. He noticed a control panel nearby, its surface covered in dust except for a small section that had been recently wiped clean. "Someone's been here," he said sharply. Kavira came to his side, frowning. "That's impossible. Aris and I are the only ones left in Marana." "Well, someone's been messing with this panel." Recently, Ryan brushed away more dust, revealing alien script that glowed faintly. "Can you read this?" Kavira leaned closer, her shoulder pressing against his. "It's a system diagnostic. The reactor is searching for something." She looked up at him, confusion in her violet eyes. "This doesn't make sense. This facility was never designed to search for anything." So Ryan's military instincts were on high alert now. "What else does it say?" Kavira's fingers traced the symbols. "It's detected something deep below the settlement. Something that's responding to the energy pulse." Her voice faltered. "Ryan, this says it's found precursor technology." "Precursor? As in the ancient alien civilization? The ones that supposedly seeded half the galaxy?" She nodded, her expression grave. "Their artifacts are worth fortunes. Entire wars have been fought over less." Ryan's mind raced. Is that why the mining company really left? They found something they couldn't control? Or something they were afraid of, Kavira whispered. She moved to another panel, wiping away the dust. "This is an evacuation order, dated 3 days before the official withdrawal." Her voice hardened. "They lied to us. They told everyone it was an economic decision, that the mines were depleted. But they left your family behind," Ryan said, the implications sinking in. "Why?" Kavira's hands trembled slightly. Taryn was asking too many questions. He found inconsistencies in the mineral surveys. He thought they were hiding something. Her voice broke. "They left us here to die." Ryan placed his hand over hers, steadying it. "But you didn't. You survived." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Without thinking, Ryan reached up to brush a strand of silver hair from her face. Kavira leaned into his touch, her skin warm beneath his fingers. "You're not what I expected when I saw a human shuttle landing," she murmured. "And what did you expect? Someone who would claim this place and force us out. Not someone who would..." She trailed off. "Not someone who would..." "You what?" He pressed gently. "Make me feel less alone," she finished, her voice barely audible. The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken desire. Ryan leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met, tentative at first, then with growing hunger. Her mouth was warmer than a human's, with a faint sweetness that reminded him of the tea she'd given him that morning. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you," he confessed. Kavira's lips curved in a smile. "Even when you thought I might be squatting on your property?" "Especially then. You were magnificent, protecting your home, your daughter." A sudden surge in the energy column interrupted the moment, bathing them in intensified blue-green light. The control panels around them lit up in sequence, displays flickering to life. "Something's happening," Kavira said, reluctantly pulling away to check the nearest panel. "The system is activating some kind of mapping protocol." As if in response, a holographic display materialized in the center of the room. It showed a three-dimensional map of Marana, with the dome they stood in highlighted at the center. Beneath it, extending deep into the planet's crust, was an intricate network of tunnels and chambers, far more extensive than any mining operation would create. "Those aren't mining tunnels," Ryan said, circling the display. "They're too regular, too precise." "No," Kavira agreed. "They're not. And look," she pointed to a massive chamber at the bottom of the network. "That's what the system is focused on." The chamber pulsed with the same blue-green light as the energy column. Within it, shapes were visible, geometric structures arranged in patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "Precursor technology," Ryan breathed. "No wonder the company ran. This kind of find would attract every treasure hunter and corporate vulture in the sector." Kavira's expression darkened. "And they left us here as guardians without telling us. Or as sacrifices if something went wrong." Ryan took her hand, squeezing it gently. "And well, now we know. And knowledge is power." She looked up at him, a new determination in her eyes. "Yes, it is." As they stood there, hands clasped, the holographic display suddenly zoomed in on the deep chamber. The geometric shapes resolved into clearer focus, devices of some kind, still active after who knew how many millennia. And at the center of it all, a pulsing core that matched the rhythm of the energy column beside them. "Whatever's down there," Ryan said, "it's connected to this facility, and now it's awake." Kavira's grip on his hand tightened. "We should go back. Check on Iris, figure out what to do next." Ryan nodded, but as they turned to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that their discovery had changed everything. For Marana, for Kavira and Iris, and for whatever future the three of them might have together. The walk back to Kavira's dwelling was charged with unspoken tension. Their hands brushed occasionally, each contact sending electricity through Ryan's body. The kiss had changed something between them, crossed a boundary that neither seemed eager to rebuild. "What are we going to do about what we found?" Ryan asked, partly to distract himself from the urge to pull her close again. "I don't know," Kavira admitted. "Precursor technology is complicated. My people have legends about those who tampered with it." "Not good legends, I take it?" She shook her head. "Some say the precursors seeded worlds with their technology as tests to see which species were worthy of advancement and which would destroy themselves with power they couldn't control." Ryan considered this. "Well, that's cheerful." They crested a small dune, bringing Kavira's dwelling into view. Ryan immediately sensed something was wrong. The door stood open, swinging slightly in the breeze. "Iris!" Kavira called, breaking into a run. Ryan followed, hand instinctively going to his blaster. They burst into the dwelling to find it empty. Items scattered as if someone had left in a hurry. "Iris!" Kavira called again, panic edging into her voice. Ryan scanned the room with a soldier's eye. "No signs of a struggle," he noted. "Nothing broken or damaged." Kavira was already checking the sleeping alcoves. "She's not here. She wouldn't just leave. I told her to stay put." Ryan knelt by the door, examining the ground. Footprints, small ones. She left on her own. He pointed to a trail leading away from the dwelling, and she was moving with purpose, not wandering. They followed the tracks, which led directly toward the central dome they'd just left. But instead of continuing to the main entrance, the footprints veered off to a smaller structure nearby that Ryan hadn't paid much attention to before. "What's this building?" he asked. "Storage. For mining equipment." Kavira's voice was tight with worry. "Why would she come here?" The door to the storage building was ajar. Inside, more footprints in the dust led to the back wall and a narrow opening that hadn't been visible from outside. The opening revealed a stairwell descending into darkness. "An access tunnel," Kavira breathed, "to the mining levels. But this wasn't on any of the maps Terran showed me." Ryan activated the light on his blaster. "Erase!" He called down the stairwell. His voice echoed, but there was no response. "We have to go after her," Kavira said, already starting down the steps. Ryan caught her arm. "Wait. We need to be prepared. Whatever's down there activated that power station and might have influenced Erase somehow." Kavira's eyes widened. "You think the precursor technology called to her?" "I don't know, but kids are curious, and if she saw something interesting..." He didn't finish the thought. They gathered supplies quickly, lights, water, a med kit from Ryan's salvaged gear. As they prepared, Ryan noticed Kavira watching him with an odd expression. "What is it?" he asked. "You're good in a crisis," she said. "Most people would be panicking." Ryan shrugged. "Military training. And I've had worse days." He checked his blaster charge, though not many. The stairs descended deep into the planet's crust, far deeper than Ryan had expected. The air grew cooler, with a strange metallic tang that made the back of his throat itch. The walls changed from rough-hewn stone to something smoother, with embedded veins that pulsed faintly with the same blue-green light they'd seen in the power station. "These aren't mining tunnels," Kavira whispered. "They're too... perfect." Ryan nodded. "And old. Very old." They followed Erase's footprints in the thin layer of dust on the floor. The tunnel eventually opened into a larger chamber with multiple passages branching off in different directions. In the center stood a pedestal with a glowing orb that bathed the room in soft light. "Which way did she go?" Kavira asked, her voice echoing slightly. Ryan examined the floor carefully. "That way," he said, pointing to the rightmost passage. "The footprints are fresher." As they moved deeper into the tunnel network, Ryan became aware of a subtle vibration in the air, a low-frequency hum that he felt more than heard. It reminded him of the engine room on the colonial transport ships, but more organic somehow. "Do you feel that?" he asked Vera. She nodded. "It's getting stronger." "We must be getting closer to whatever's generating the power." The passage widened, the ceiling rising until it disappeared into darkness above them. The walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. And ahead, a soft glow beckoned. They emerged into a vast chamber that took Ryan's breath away. It was identical to the one they'd seen in the holographic display, but the reality was far more impressive. Geometric structures floated in midair, rotating slowly around a central pillar of pulsing energy. The floor was inlaid with complex circuits that glowed with inner light, and there, at the base of the energy pillar, sat Erase. She was cross-legged, staring up at the swirling patterns with rapt attention. "Erase!" Kavira called, rushing forward. The child turned, her face breaking into a smile. "Mama, look what I found. It's so pretty." Ryan approached more cautiously, scanning the chamber for threats. "Erase, how did you find this place?" "It called me," she said simply, "in my head. It showed me pictures of the tunnels." Ryan and Kavira exchanged worried glances. "What else did it show you?" Ryan asked gently. "It showed me how to fix your ship," Iris said, looking at Ryan. "The one the storm broke. It can make it work again." Ryan felt his heart skip a beat. "It can repair my shuttle," Iris nodded enthusiastically. "It says it has lots of power to share." But her face fell slightly. "It also says we can't leave Oris. Not ever." "What do you mean?" Kavira knelt beside her daughter. "It says we're connected to the planet now. Our bodies. If we try to leave, we'll get sick and die." Iris looked up at her mother with wide eyes. Is that true, Mama? Kavira looked stricken. I don't know. Ryan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. A way off planet, but at what cost? He looked at Kavira, at the fear and confusion in her violet eyes, and made a decision. It doesn't matter, he said firmly. I'm not leaving without you two. If you can't leave, then I'm staying. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Kavira, but as soon as he said them, he knew they were true. Somewhere between the sandstorm and the kiss, these two had become more important to him than escape. Kavira rose and moved to him, her eyes shining with emotion. You would stay, even knowing you could leave. What's waiting for me out there? He asked softly. More wars? More running. Here, I've found something worth staying for. She reached up, tracing the line of his jaw with slender fingers. You humans are remarkable creatures, she whispered. So adaptable, so passionate. Ryan caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. You haven't seen anything yet. The moment was interrupted by Iris's giggle. Are you going to be my new papa? She asked innocently. Ryan felt heat rise to his face, but Kira just smiled. Perhaps, she said, not taking her eyes off Ryan, if he wishes to be. Around them, the chamber seemed to pulse in response to their emotions, the light growing warmer, more golden. Whatever ancient intelligence resided in this place, it appeared to approve of their connection. And as Ryan looked at the woman and child before him, he realized that his impulsive purchase of a ghost town had given him something he never expected to find again. A home. In the days that followed their discovery, Marana began to transform. The precursor technology, now fully awakened, pulsed with energy that spread throughout the settlement. Systems long dormant hummed to life. Water began flowing through previously dry conduits. Lights flickered on in abandoned buildings, and Ryan and Kavira grew closer. They spent their days exploring the underground complex with Iris, who seemed to have an intuitive understanding of the ancient technology. The child could touch control panels and somehow know their function, as if the system was communicating directly with her mind. It likes us, Iris explained one evening as they sat in Kavira's dwelling, now comfortably lit by power from the reactivated grid. It's been waiting for the right people. What does that mean, the right people? Ryan asked, passing Kavira a cup of the sweet tea she'd brewed. Their fingers touched during the exchange, lingering longer than necessary. These small contacts had become frequent between them, each one charged with unspoken desire. It told me it was built by the old ones to find species who could work together, Iris said, playing with one of her wooden toys. It's been testing us. Kavira and Ryan exchanged glances. Testing us how? Kavira asked. To see if we fight or help each other. Iris looked up, her expression suddenly older than her years. It's seen lots of species who just fight and destroy. It was waiting for something different. Ryan leaned forward. And it thinks we're different? Iris nodded. A human and a Lyrian living together, not fighting. It never saw that before. Lyrian, Ryan raised an eyebrow at Kavira. Is that what your species is called? You never mentioned it. Kavira shrugged, a very human gesture she'd picked up from him. It didn't seem important. Most humans just call us blueskins anyway. Well, I'm not most humans, Ryan said with a grin. No, Kavira agreed softly. You're certainly not. That night, after Iris had gone to sleep, they sat outside under the stars. The air was cool, but Ryan barely noticed, his attention fixed on Kavira as she explained more about her people. Lyrians are empaths, she said. Not mind readers, but we sense emotions. It's why we've always been wary of humans. Your emotions are so intense, overwhelming sometimes. Is that why you kept your distance at first? Ryan asked. She nodded. Partly. And partly because I was afraid of my own response to you. Her violet eyes met his in the starlight. Human emotions may be overwhelming, but they're also intoxicating. Ryan moved closer, drawn by the admission. And what am I feeling right now? Kavira's breath caught. Desire? Longing. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The same things I'm feeling. He reached out, tracing the curve of her cheek with his fingertips. I've never wanted anyone the way I want you, he admitted, but I don't want to rush you. My people don't believe in denying what we feel, she said, leaning into his touch. Life is too precious for that. Their lips met, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. The kiss deepened, hands exploring, bodies pressing closer. Ryan marveled at the softness of her skin, the subtle differences in texture and temperature that reminded him she was alien, yet somehow perfectly compatible. They made their way inside to Kavira's sleeping alcove, whispered words and gentle touches giving way to more urgent need. In the dim light, blue skin against tan, they discovered each other fully, differences forgotten in the universal language of desire. Afterward, lying together in the quiet darkness, Ryan felt a peace he'd never known before. Kavira's head rested on his chest, her silver hair spilling across his skin like liquid moonlight. Your heart beats faster than mine, she murmured, placing her palm over it. It's got a lot to be excited about, he replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. She laughed softly. Humans, always with the clever words. Not always, Ryan said, suddenly serious. Sometimes we struggle to find the right ones. He took a deep breath. Like now, when I want to tell you that I think I'm falling in love with you. Kavira raised herself up to look at him, her eyes luminous in the darkness. You don't need to find the words. I can feel it. She touched his chest again. Here. They fell asleep in each other's arms, and for the first time since arriving on Oris, Ryan didn't dream of the wars he'd left behind. Morning brought a new discovery. As they approached the central dome with Iris, they found the entrance had changed. The partially buried doorway was now fully exposed, the metal gleaming as if newly forged, and above it, glowing symbols had appeared. What does it say? Ryan asked, squinting at the unfamiliar script. Welcome to Nexus Point Marana, Kavira translated, her voice filled with wonder. May harmony flourish between worlds. Inside, the transformation was even more dramatic. The dusty, abandoned machinery had been replaced by sleek consoles and holographic displays. The central energy column now reached to the ceiling, its blue-green light steady and strong. As they entered, a holographic figure materialized before them, a tall, slender being with 4 arms and an elongated head. Its form was translucent, shimmering with the same energy as the column. Greetings, it said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I am the custodian of Nexus Point Marana. Iris stepped forward fearlessly. Hello. I'm Iris. This is my mama and Ryan. The custodian inclined its head. Yes, I know you all. You have been observed, tested, and found worthy. Worthy of what? Ryan asked, instinctively moving closer to Kavira and Iris. Of stewardship, the custodian replied. This facility was created to identify species capable of peaceful coexistence. For too long, this galaxy has been plagued by conflict between different forms of life. So this is some kind of peace experiment? Kavira asked. More than an experiment. A seed. The holographic being gestured and the room filled with images of Marana. Not as it was now, but as it could be. Gleaming spires, lush gardens, a thriving community of diverse species. Nexus points were established throughout the galaxy, the custodian continued, each waiting for the right combination of beings to activate them. You, human and Lyrian, have demonstrated the capacity for cooperation, adaptation, and mutual respect that the precursors sought. Ryan felt Kavira's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining. And what happens now? He asked. Now, Marana awakens fully, the custodian said. It will become a beacon, drawing others who seek harmony rather than dominance. A new beginning. As if in response to its words, the floor beneath them trembled slightly. Through the transparent walls of the dome, they could see buildings throughout the settlement beginning to glow with inner light. The transformation has begun, the custodian said. Soon Marana will be as it was meant to be. And us? Kavira asked. What is our role in all this? You are the first stewards of the new Marana, the hologram replied. Those who come will look to you for guidance. Your union, human and Lyrian, will be the foundation upon which this community is built. Ryan looked at Kavira, seeing his own mix of astonishment and hope reflected in her violet eyes. Then he glanced at Iris, who was watching the holographic transformations of Marana with unabashed delight. His ghost town, his 100-credit investment, his impulsive purchase that had led him to a family and a future he could never have imagined. "I guess we'd better get to work then," he said, squeezing Kavira's hand. "We've got a town to rebuild." 6 months had transformed Marana beyond recognition. The once abandoned ghost town now hummed with life and activity. Gleaming spires rose where ruins had stood. Gardens bloomed in what had been barren sand. Water flowed through canals that crisscrossed the settlement, fed by deep aquifers tapped by precursor technology. And people had come. First, a small group of human scientists who detected the energy signature. Then a family of Lyrians, distant relatives of Kavira, who had received strange dreams calling them to Horus. Soon after, representatives from a dozen different species arrived, drawn by what they described as a feeling or intuition that something important was happening on this once-forgotten world. Ryan stood on the balcony of what had become their home, a beautiful dwelling near the central dome, constructed by the same technology that had rebuilt the rest of Marana. From here, he could see the entire settlement, now home to nearly 200 beings of various species. "Admiring your kingdom?" Kavira's voice came from behind him, followed by her arms slipping around his waist. Ryan leaned back into her embrace. "Our kingdom," he corrected. "Still can't believe it sometimes. 6 months ago, I was a washed-up ex-military pilot with 100 credits to my name. And now you're bonded to an alien woman and father to a child who talks to ancient technology." Kavira's laughter vibrated against his back. Life takes strange turns. Their bonding ceremony had been held 3 months ago, combining human and Lyrian traditions. Ryan had worn his cleaned and polished uniform, while Kavira had appeared in a flowing silver gown that complemented her blue skin perfectly. Representatives from every species in Marana had attended, witnessing the union that embodied the settlement's purpose. "Speaking of our daughter, where is she?" Ryan asked, turning to face his wife. Even now, the sight of her took his breath away, especially in the simple white dress she wore, which reminded him of the day they'd met. "With the custodian." Again, Kavira's expression grew more serious. "Ryan, I'm worried about how much time she spends with that hologram." "The custodian says their connection is important," Ryan reminded her, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "That Iris is the key to fully activating Marana's potential." "I know, but she's still a child." "My child?" Kavira's violet eyes clouded with concern. "Our child now." Ryan pulled her closer. "And nothing is more important than her safety. I'll talk to the custodian again." He found Iris and the holographic custodian in the central chamber of the dome. The child sat cross-legged before a floating array of geometric shapes, moving them with subtle gestures of her small hands. The shapes responded as if they were physical objects, rearranging themselves into complex patterns. "Papa!" Iris exclaimed when she noticed him, the shapes freezing in midair. "Look what I can do now." "Very impressive," Ryan said, kneeling beside her. "Your mother's wondering where you are." "The custodian is teaching me how to activate the beacon," Iris explained excitedly. "Once it's on, more people will come. Good people who want to live together without fighting." Ryan looked up at the holographic being. "Is that true? You're preparing to activate some kind of beacon?" The custodian's form shimmered slightly. "The final phase of Marana's awakening approaches. The nexus point must announce its presence to those who seek harmony. And Iris is necessary for this. Her mind is uniquely attuned to our systems," the custodian confirmed. "A rare compatibility we did not anticipate, but greatly value." Ryan frowned. "She's just a child. This seems like a lot of responsibility." "Papa, I want to help," Iris insisted. "The custodian says I'm special." "You are special," Ryan agreed, "but that doesn't mean you have to do everything the custodian asks." The holographic being tilted its head. "You fear for her safety. This is understandable, but I assure you the process is not dangerous." "Then you won't mind if I stay and observe," Ryan said firmly. "Of course not. In fact, your presence may be beneficial. The bond between you three, human, Lyrian, and child, is central to what makes Marana unique. Ryan watched as Orise returned to her manipulation of the geometric shapes. The patterns she created grew more complex, eventually forming what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Certain points on the map glowed with the same blue-green energy that powered Marana. Other nexus points, the custodian explained, noticing Ryan's interest. Most dormant, some destroyed. Marana will be the first to fully awaken in over 10,000 years. And what happens when it awakens, Ryan asked. It becomes a beacon for those who seek a different path. A demonstration that diverse species can coexist in harmony. The custodian's voice took on a more solemn tone. The precursors foresaw a time when the galaxy would be torn by conflicts between different forms of life. They created the nexus points as seeds for a different future. Orise completed her pattern, and the galactic map pulsed once before collapsing into a single point of light. The light floated to the center of the chamber, hovering above the energy column. It is ready, the custodian announced, but final activation requires the presence of all three of you, the human, the Lyrian, the child. Together, you represent what Marana stands for. Ryan called for Kavira, who arrived quickly, concern evident in her expression until Ryan explained what was happening. She knelt beside Orise, placing a protective arm around her daughter. "Are you sure this is safe?" she asked the custodian. "It is not only safe, it is necessary," the hologram replied. "The galaxy needs what you three have created here." The three of them stood before the floating point of light, which had grown to the size of a small melon. At the custodian's direction, they each placed a hand upon it. Ryan's tanned human hand, Kavira's slender blue fingers, and Reese's small palm. The light pulsed once, twice, and then expanded outward in a wave of energy that passed harmlessly through them. The entire dome vibrated with power. Outside, they could hear exclamations of surprise and wonder from the settlement's inhabitants. "It is done," the custodian said. "The beacon is active. Marana now calls to all who seek harmony." As they exited the dome, they found the citizens of Marana gathered outside, staring up at the sky. Above the settlement, visible even in daylight, a column of blue-green energy stretched upward into space, a beacon that would be visible across light years. That night, as Orise slept peacefully in her room, Ryan and Kavira stood on their balcony, watching the energy column shimmer against the star-filled sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Kavira asked softly. "Staying here? Giving up your freedom to leave?" Ryan turned to her, taking in the sight of his alien wife silhouetted against the stars. "Not for a second," he said honestly. "I came to Oris looking for isolation, for escape. Instead, I found connection, purpose." He pulled her close. "Love." Kavira's body melded against his, familiar, yet still thrilling after months together. Who would have thought? A human man buys an alien ghost town for 100 credits and ends up with a family and a cosmic mission. Ryan laughed. "When you put it that way, it sounds like I got a pretty good deal." "The best deal in the galaxy," Kavira agreed, rising on her toes to kiss him. As their lips met, the beacon above them pulsed brighter, as if responding to their connection. The very embodiment of what Marana represented. A human and a Lyrian, once strangers from different worlds, now united in love and purpose. And somewhere across the vast reaches of space, others were seeing that light, a promise of a place where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where harmony was possible between all forms of life, all because a lonely human had taken a chance on a ghost town and found much more than he bargained for.